one of the things, and this was an error on my part, when I said 2.5 months on 2758, or 2578, huh? Oh, yeah, years, yeah, sorry. It's actually 2.5 plus 1 month. The reason the speaker wants that is if you end something January 1, the legislature's not in session. If something has to be changed, that gives them a 30-day or 20-day window, something like that. So that was on my part. So it's basically 2.5 plus 1. Then on, and I'm just working off of the bill, not on a CCR, is line 16 then would be February, is that correct, Jenna?
Line 12 and line 16 would change from July to February.
Right. 1 of 27. Then you would strike Community Mental Health Center on line 18 and line 21 and insert qualified nonprofit provider. Then on page 2, line 28, that becomes February 1, 2027 instead of July 1, 2027. See this? Now these dates are wrong up here because they rejected.
Madam Chair, I know that we have been working on this issue for quite some time with both parties, and I'm very pleased to see that parties come together and strike a compromise. That makes our job a lot easier, doesn't it?
I do that a lot, Madam Chair.
As do I. Thank you so much. Okay, so what are you asking for, a copy of the bill?
There's something on the back that needs to be struck.
Oh, the very last line on the back, I'm being told that needed to be struck. At the
That
bottom.
date changes to February 1, because there's still, that's where that 2.5 plus 1 month comes into effect. So that's when that would expire. Instead of 3 years out, it's 2.5 plus 1 month.
Okay.
So that does stay.
Okay.
No, any nonprofit.
Jenna, could you give, or one of the advisors, give us an explanation of what that line does? Because one of the parties was concerned that that line was unnecessary, since it's...
Well, I believe that that's what takes and sets up the sunset, because then this all expires on February 1 like the rest of the bill does.
Thank you, Jenna, if you would explain that. I think the concern is that the entire bill would expire, not just the sunset. Is that correct? Jen, I'd ask for an explanation. You have one ready for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We were just discussing the provisions in subsection E relate to a deemed status, which is separate from the CCBHC certification. The language in subsection E relates to certification renewal of programs and treatments previously certified by the Secretary. So it's separate from the CCBHC certification. So that language should not be stricken. The date can be changed, but we don't want to strike that language in line 28.
I'm sorry. I know you think that's clarifying it for me. I'm still a little bit confused. So if the, so current CCBHCs, what is this language what is E dealing with? Renewal, Eileen's saying.
So the language in subsection E would state that if a program or treatment that's provided by a CCBHC has been granted a certification, may be granted a certification renewal if they have been previously certified by the Secretary, which I am told is a deemed status provision.
This, I think that she probably just got it, but this was the original point, or one of the main points, Madam Chair, was that if a certified community behavioral health clinic also had national accreditation from CARF or the Joint Commission, then they would be able to work on those provisions. So this has to do with the grandfathering of the separate section of the bill, we believe.
And so since we're trying to work with two different parties here, so then could you come, Stuart, could you come to the microphone? Does that make sense to you?
Stuart Little, Government Relations. I think the issue is this was obviously part of what they brought forward with the bill, because it makes that transition from your temporary certification that you're going to get, and you go through those phases, and you've been licensed by KDADS already. It will then allow you to use the deemed status to make the regulatory process easier. And the comments from KDADS when they had testimony on this bill brought that up, and it's in their testimony. My question is, why take that away? Anybody else that's going to be coming through the process should have that same access to the deemed status to make that useful to them if it's useful to them. That's my only reason not to strike that sunset. Don't take that sunset out, because then anybody else that comes in, we're treating everyone equally.
So that's why you had it stricken when we
Yes.
were having our first meeting, because you still want them to be able to have that. It's not a duplication of the same date when it comes to the sunset.
Our argument would be anybody going through that process would hope to have the same.
Well, but
Okay.
Stuart, that's grandfathering what we already have in process. Anybody that would come in new through as a new one, this wouldn't have an impact on. This is grandfathering what we've had out there existing.
My question would be I don't know if that's a distinction that I can draw.
Kyle, is that something that Andy would have information on or not?
Eileen has a comment for us.
I'm going to try and take a stab at it. So if we broaden the pool of prospective CCBHCs, once if an outside, a new entity becomes certified as a CCBHC, then if we remove that expiration date at the bottom in subsection E, then they won't have to go through an onerous recertification process. They would be able to take advantage of that same process that the existing CMHCs that can become CCBHCs, the newer entities can also take advantage of that process instead of going through a full recertification. I think that's the goal that they're trying to, so that no one really gets any sort of advantage. It kind of levels the playing field
To give the same advantage for anyone who was trying to apply,
for anyone who becomes licensed as a CCBHC.
becomes licensed as a CCB.
Or certified as a
Certified.
CCBHC, I beg your pardon. Yes, so essentially, I think it would effectively change the process for recertification. It may look like an easier pathway, but I think once there are more CCBHCs taking advantage of that recertification through either being certified through KDADS or through the national accreditation, then basically it becomes an easier process for everyone, but no one gets a leg up as far as recertification or going through an extra long process, while some others may not. I think the original intent in the bill was to make it easier on CMHCs who are trying to become CCBHCs or already were CCBHCs, but given the broadening of the language now being proposed, I think they're trying to broaden, by removing that expiration date, they're going to broaden who is eligible to take advantage of the recertification, I think.
Okay.
But if we're letting everything expire on February 1, 2027, it's a moot point. So that's why if we just leave that date in there, it matches the date on the front page, and it becomes a moot point.
And again, I guess I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand, it's late. If the sunset is already going to sunset, but what we're sunsetting is that it's only the people who are currently applying to be CCBHCs, right? The 2.5 years gives an opportunity where it's only those that are currently applying to be CCBHCs. Just making sure I understand.
Well, the 26 are already in the pipeline.
Right, so for the 26th, they're already in the
They're needing
pipeline,
the deemed status.
and they're getting the deemed status. And so then the
It has
sunset.
no impact on any new CCBHCs after that date.
Right, so, but after that deadline, after the sunset, that other portion does not have to sunset, correct? It would still give anybody who wants to become a CCBHC the same opportunity that was in Section E, rather than removing that.
No, because this is new language. So that's why it was only done for that window. That wasn't existing language in our law.
It was new language.
Yeah, that's why you see it in a different font.
Sorry, I just don't have the bill in front of me, but now I recall seeing that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Right. So that's why we thought we'd just keep all the dates the same on there.
And so, I know we're trying to work with both parties here. Stuart, you look like you have something to say. Do you want to come to the microphone?
Little government relations. It is going to be repetitive, but it was put in there to serve a valuable, constructive purpose to ease the process for the first round of folks going through. And I don't know why, other than to make it more challenging, you're taking it out instead of leaving it for anybody that comes on, have the same resources, the same opportunity, those kinds of things.
Kyle, would you mind coming, if it's okay with you, Madam Chair? And would you address if you would have a problem with removing that expiration?
I stopped having a problem with minutes ago. So yeah, that's fine, Madam Chair. I mean, I think that I see both sides of it, but this is not a hill for us to die on.
Okay. Are you comfortable with taking off then removing that expiration date to allow any new CCBHC applicants to have the same advantage?
Well, we may be able to come to an agreement, because as we were visiting out there, we create a bit of a problem back on page 1 where we were striking community mental health center in those 2 lines by adding qualified nonprofit provider. And the reason for that is that we have at least 3 CCBHCs that do not fall under qualified nonprofits because they're county-owned entities, and that's by state law. So the community mental health centers would have to stay in there, and then you still add the qualified nonprofit providers. So then that deals with the entities that are wanting to come into this. Because otherwise, we could create a problem for our three of our biggest ones, and 2 of them happen to be 988 call centers as well.
So we would be adding language, not striking language and adding language, but leaving that language and then add the other.
Right. So you
Okay.
leave community mental health center in there, and then you come in with qualified nonprofit provider behind that on those 2
Okay.
lines. Because I'd forgotten about those 3 that
Well,
are
that makes sense.
labeled that, yeah.
So well, would it make sense to me, committee? Yes, line 18 and 21. And that's perfectly agreeable because that's a good point. So now it looks like we're just back to that last line of letting that expire to allow them to have the same opportunity.
We'll do that.
We're all in agreement. Yes.
And that's the only one that we can do tonight. All right. Thank you.